The old grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 3, its familiar deep resonance a comforting presence in the house my late husband Frank and I had filled with a lifetime of memories here in Silverwood. I was in the kitchen, carefully measuring flour for a lemon drizzle cake, the scent of citrus and butter, a sweet balm against the lingering ache of Frank's absence. The doorbell rang, a sharp, modern chime that was William's only contribution to the house, installed last Christmas. I wiped my hands on my apron and went to the door, my heart giving a little flutter of anticipation. It was my son. "Hi, Mom," William said, stepping inside and kissing the air beside my cheek. He was dressed in a sharp suit, the fabric whispering of money I knew he didn't have, his cologne so strong it made my eyes water. "Just thought I'd pop in. See how you're doing." "I'm doing just fine, dear. I was just baking your favorite cake," I said, leading him toward the kitchen. "That's great, Mom, but you really shouldn't be tiring yourself out." He scanned the room, his eyes not seeing the love-worn comfort of the place, but inventorying its contents. His gaze settled on the stack of mail on the counter. "What's this?" he asked, picking up a blue envelope. "This is the second notice for the electricity bill. Mom, did you forget to pay it again?" My heart sank. "No, William, I paid it. I remember writing the check and putting it in the mailbox last Tuesday. I was certain of it. I had a system Frank had taught me. Bills were paid the day they arrived." He sighed, a dramatic put-upon sound he had perfected over the years. "Mom, look at the date. It was due last week. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it online right now." He pulled out his phone, his thumbs tapping furiously on the glass screen. "See? All sorted. But we really need to be more careful. What if the power had been cut off? You could have fallen in the dark." His concern felt like a shroud, suffocating and false. I knew I had paid that bill. I had a clear memory of the stamp, the feel of the envelope, the walk to the end of the driveway. But William was so confident, so dismissive of my own certainty, that a tiny, cold sliver of doubt wedged itself into my mind. Was I becoming forgetful? At 82, it was a fear that lived in the back of my mind, a shadowy specter I refused to acknowledge. "Thank you, William," I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "Of course, Mom. That's what I'm here for," he said, patting my shoulder. He looked around the kitchen again, his gaze lingering on the worn linoleum and the old humming refrigerator. "You know, we need to have a serious talk soon about what's best for you. This big old house, it's a lot to manage." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. They were cold, calculating like a stranger's. As he left, the scent of his expensive cologne hung in the air, a cloying, artificial smell that felt alien in my home. I stood alone in the silence, the joy of baking gone, replaced by a deep, chilling premonition that the house wasn't the only thing he was trying to manage. He was trying to manage me. A week later, William returned, and this time he brought his wife, Cheryl. Cheryl was a woman who wore her ambition like a second skin, her smile as sharp and brittle as her lacquered nails. They sat me down at my own dining room table, the polished mahogany reflecting their serious faces. They called it a family meeting. It felt more like an intervention. "Marion, we're worried about you," Cheryl began, her voice dripping with a syrupy, insincere sympathy. "William told me about the electricity bill, and last week when I called, you couldn't remember what you had for lunch." "I was having a late lunch, Cheryl. I hadn't eaten yet," I said, my hands gripping each other in my lap. "It was a lie," I said. I had told her I'd had soup and a sandwich, but she was twisting my words, weaving them into a narrative of my decline. "It's more than that, Mom," William chimed in, placing a file folder on the table between us. "I've been looking over your finances, your bank statements. You're making errors, small ones for now. A double payment to the gardener, a missed credit card payment. It's all becoming too much for you. He opened the folder, showing me papers filled with figures and highlighted lines. It was a dizzying array of information, and I felt a wave of confusion. Had I really done all that? Frank had always handled the complex finances, leaving me with the day-to-day household accounts. Since his passing, I had tried my best to keep up, but perhaps I was failing. Perhaps they were right. This house alone, Cheryl continued, gesturing around the room with a sweep of her hand. The property taxes, the upkeep, the cleaning, it's a full-time job. You deserve to rest, Marion. To be looked after. Then came the proposal, delivered with the slick smoothness of a sales pitch. They wanted to sell the house. They would use the money to buy a larger, more modern home for themselves, a place with a lovely self-contained suite for me. I would have no more worries, no bills to pay, no responsibilities. I would be taken care of. The words washed over me, cold and terrifying. Sell this house? This was not just a collection of bricks and mortar. It was the vessel of my life. It was the home where I'd raised William, where Frank and I had danced in the living room on our 50th anniversary, where the scuff marks on the doorframe still marked our son's growth from a toddler to a man. No, I whispered, the word catching in my throat. This is my home. William's face hardened, the mask of concern slipping. Mom, be reasonable. This is not a discussion. This is what's happening. We're doing this for your own good. We need to protect you from yourself. They talked at me for another hour, their voices a relentless tide of logic and false affection, chipping away at my resolve. They spoke about me as if I were a child, or worse, an object, an asset to be managed and liquidated. By the time they left, leaving the file folder on the table like a verdict, I felt a profound and chilling certainty. This wasn't about my well-being. It was about my money, and they would stop at nothing to get it. The silence in the house after they left was a physical weight. I walked through the rooms, touching the furniture, the framed photographs, the worn spines of Frank's books. Every object was a memory, a testament to a life they wanted to erase and sell to the highest bidder. The fear from my first encounter with William had now blossomed into a cold, hard certainty. I was not just fighting for my home. I was fighting for my identity, my sanity, my very existence, and I could not do it alone. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I called Vincent Cole, the lawyer Frank had trusted implicitly for over 40 years. He was semi-retired, a kind, deliberate man with eyes that saw more than you were saying. Marion, he said, his voice warm with genuine surprise and pleasure. How wonderful to hear from you. How are you holding up? Vincent, I need to see you, I said, my voice trembling slightly. It's about William. He must have heard the urgency in my tone because he simply said, my office. 11 o'clock. Sitting across from him in his leather and mahogany office, surrounded by the reassuring scent of old books and fresh coffee, I told him everything. I told him about the forgotten bill, Cheryl's condescending remarks, the family meeting, and their plan to sell my home. I explained how they were building a case, brick by brick, to paint me as incompetent and senile. As I spoke, the shame and confusion I'd felt melted away, replaced by a clear, righteous anger. Vincent listened patiently, his hands steepled, his gaze never leaving my face. He didn't interrupt once. When I was finished, he was silent for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. They're laying the groundwork for a petition of guardianship, Marion, he said finally, his voice calm but firm. They will try to prove to a court that you are mentally unfit to manage your own affairs. If they succeed, they'll have complete control. A wave of nausea washed over me. Can they do that? They can try, he said, and they will be very convincing. a concerned son, a worried daughter-in-law. It's a powerful narrative. We need a better one. He leaned forward. Marion, I need you to tell me about William, not the man who sat at your dining room table, the boy. What was he like? I hesitated. Then the memories flooded back. He was complicated, always wanted the best of everything. He was bright, but he lacked empathy. He never understood why his father spent hours in the garden. He saw it as wasted time. He wasn't cruel, just detached from things that didn't benefit him directly. Tell me something only the two of you would know. A happy memory, something indelible. Vincent prodded gently. My mind drifted back, past the teenage years of sullen silence, past the college years of infrequent calls, all the way back to a sun-drenched afternoon in the backyard. Our dog, I said, a sad smile touching my lips. We had a golden retriever mix, a rescue. William adored him. He named him... I paused, the name sitting on my tongue, a perfect, polished stone of a memory. Vincent's eyes lit up with a flicker of an idea. Good. That's very good. He outlined a strategy then, one that was both terrifying and brilliant. He wanted me to play their game, to lean into their narrative. Let them build their case on a foundation of lies, Marion. Let them walk into that courtroom brimming with confidence. A man who believes his own lies is the easiest to unravel. But you must be strong. You must appear weak. Can you do that? I thought of my home, of Frank's memory, of the life they were trying to steal. I straightened my back. Yes, Vincent, I said, my voice clear and steady. I can. The official-looking envelope arrived a month later. My hands trembled as I slid it open with the silver letter opener from Frank's desk. The words inside were cold, clinical, and utterly devastating. In the matter of the conservatorship of Marion Sinclair, it was a summons. William had formally filed the petition. A date was set. In the eyes of the law, I was no longer just a mother or a widow. I was a case, a subject, a problem to be solved. Reading the attached declaration from my son was like being stabbed with 1,000 tiny, sharp icicles. He had documented every perceived failing, twisting innocent moments into proof of my mental decay. The time I misplaced my reading glasses was cited as chronic disorientation. The day I called his new business partner by the wrong name became severe memory loss and social inappropriateness. He even mentioned the lemon drizzle cake, claiming I had used salt instead of sugar, a fabrication so absurd and cruel it took my breath away. He painted a portrait of a woman lost in a fog of dementia, a danger to herself, and a burden to her loving, long-suffering son. That night, sleep was impossible. I wandered the quiet, dark house, the legal papers clutched in my hand like a death sentence. I stopped in the hallway, in front of the gallery of family photos Frank had so carefully arranged. There was William's first-grade picture, a gap-toothed smile plastered on his face. There he was at his high school graduation, looking bored and eager to escape. And there, in a faded color photograph from the late 1980s, was a 10-year-old William, his arms wrapped around the thick golden neck of our dog. Tears I hadn't allowed myself to shed finally streamed down my face. This was the boy I had loved, the one I had protected. Where had he gone? When had the love in his heart been replaced by this cold, avaricious thing that now wore his face? I traced the outline of his youthful features in the photograph, my finger coming to rest on the dog's happy, panting face. The dog, Jake, who had been his constant companion, his confidant, the keeper of his childhood secrets. The betrayal was no longer an abstract fear. It was a physical agony, a hollow ache in my chest where a mother's pride used to be. I had always known William was ambitious, that he valued money and status above all else. I had seen the way he dismissed his father's gentle passions, the way he treated service workers, the impatience he showed with anything that didn't offer a direct reward. But I had never, ever believed he was capable of this, of trying to strip me of my dignity, my home, and my very mind, all for the sake of an inheritance he felt was being inconveniently delayed. I sank onto the bottom step of the staircase, the cold wood seeping through my nightgown. The house was silent, save for the steady ticking of the grandfather clock, a sound that had once been a comfort and now felt like a countdown to the day I would face my own son in court and fight for the right to exist in my own life. The tears stopped. The raw grief solidified into something else, something hard and resolute. He had started this war. Following Vincent's advice, and for Frank's memory, I would be the one to finish it. The day before the hearing was strangely serene. A soft autumn light filtered through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The oppressive anxiety of the past weeks had receded, leaving behind a profound, almost unnerving calm. I had surrendered to the path Vincent had laid out for me. The outcome was now out of my hands, resting on the strength of a single, well-aimed memory. I spent the morning in my garden, a place Frank had lovingly cultivated for over 50 years. I deadheaded the last of the roses, their velvet petals cool against my fingertips. I weeded the patch where the heirloom tomatoes grew, the earthy scent of the soil grounding me. This garden was a living chronicle of our love, a testament to patience and nurturing, qualities my son seemed to view as weaknesses. As I worked, I felt Frank's presence beside me, not as a sorrowful ghost, but as a quiet, reassuring strength. He had been a man of integrity and foresight. He had trusted Vincent Cole for a reason. In the afternoon, I carefully selected my outfit for the following day. I chose a simple gray wool dress, one that made me look understated and perhaps a little frail. I laid it out on the bed, alongside a pair of sensible, low-heeled shoes. I would be playing a part, and the costume was essential. I was to be the picture of a vulnerable, elderly woman, confused and overwhelmed by the proceedings, just as William's petition described me. It was a bitter pill to swallow, to intentionally present myself as the caricature he had invented, but I knew it was necessary. At precisely 4 p.m., the phone rang. It was Vincent. "Marion, are you ready for tomorrow?" he asked, his voice steady and professional. "As I'll ever be, Vincent," I replied, looking at the gray dress laid out on my bed. "Good. Now I want to review the plan one last time. When William is on the stand, he will say many things that will be hurtful and untrue. You must not react. Do not cry. Do not shake your head. Do not look at the judge. Look down at your hands. Appear weary. Let the judge and everyone else in that room see the woman William has described. Let them believe it." "I understand," I said, my voice quiet. "I will not challenge his specific claims," Vincent continued. "I will not ask you to refute them. It would devolve into a he said, she said argument. And in these cases, the court often sides with the younger, seemingly more capable party. Our strategy is not to dismantle his case brick by brick, but to demolish its entire foundation with one blow. You must not speak a single word until I give you the signal. Do you remember the signal? You'll adjust your tie." "Exactly. Do you remember this? When I do that, and only then, you may answer if the judge asks you a question, and you will answer clearly and confidently. Until then, you are a silent observer in your own life. Can you do this?" I looked out the window at the garden, at the sturdy oak tree Frank had planted from a sapling. It had weathered countless storms. "Yes, Vincent," I said, my resolve hardening like tempered steel. "I can do this." The long night stretched before me, but for the first time, I was not afraid of the dawn. The courtroom was exactly as I had imagined, cold, impersonal, and smelling faintly of floor polish and anxiety. The dark wood paneling and the stern-faced judge sitting high on his bench were designed to intimidate, to make one feel small and insignificant. It was working. I sat beside Vincent at our designated table, my hands folded neatly in my lap, my gaze directed downwards as instructed. I could feel the eyes of the other people in the room on me, curious, pitying. They saw what William wanted them to see. When he was called to the witness stand, my son looked the part of the devoted, heartbroken child. He wore a conservative navy suit, his expression a carefully crafted mask of sorrow and reluctant duty. His voice, when he began to speak, was filled with a performer's gravitas. "I love my mother more than anything," he began, his eyes glancing towards the judge. "This is the hardest thing I have ever had to do, but I can no longer stand by and watch her decline. She is a danger to herself." Then came the litany of lies, each one delivered with convincing sincerity. He recounted the tale of the unpaid electricity bill, embellishing it with a story of finding me sitting in the dark, confused and cold. He described finding spoiled food in the refrigerator, claiming I had forgotten how to shop or cook safely. He even told the court that I would often get lost during my daily walks, and that neighbors had had to bring me home. A complete and utter fabrication. "Last month," he said, his voice cracking with false emotion, "we had a small family dinner. She served a beautiful cake, but she'd used salt instead of sugar. She didn't even notice. She just kept smiling, offering everyone another piece of this inedible thing. It was heartbreaking. She's living in a world that doesn't make sense anymore." I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and call him the liar he was. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, the furious pounding of my heart against my ribs. But I remembered Vincent's instructions. I kept my head down, my expression placid, my body still. To anyone watching, I looked like a defeated old woman, perhaps not even comprehending the accusations being leveled against me. Cheryl was called next, and her testimony was a masterful performance of tearful concern, corroborating every one of William's stories. She spoke of my blank stares, my nonsensical conversations, my inability to follow a simple television plot. Together, they painted a devastatingly clear and compelling picture of a woman whose mind was gone. I chanced a quick glance at the judge. He was looking at me with an expression of profound pity. He was nodding along to Cheryl's testimony, his mind clearly made up. He saw a frail, senile woman and a loving family trying to do the right thing. My heart sank. Our plan felt impossibly fragile. William and Cheryl had built a fortress of lies, and I was beginning to fear that not even the truth could knock it down. Vincent placed a reassuring hand on my arm for a moment, a silent message to hold fast. I took a deep, shuddering breath and focused once more on my folded hands. After Cheryl stepped down, the judge sighed, looking ready to wrap things up. "Mr. Cole," he said, a hint of impatience in his voice, "do you have any questions for your client's son?" "Just a few, Your Honor," Vincent said, rising slowly. He walked not towards the judge, but towards the witness stand where William sat, looking confident and composed. William's lawyer, a slick man in a suit as expensive as my son's, leaned back in his chair, a smirk on his face. As my son, this was a mere formality. Vincent didn't mention the finances, the spoiled food, or the salted cake. He simply stood before my son for a moment, letting the silence hang in the air. "Mr. Sinclair," he began, his voice conversational, almost gentle, "you've spoken at length about your mother's memory. I'd like to take a moment to talk about yours. You've painted a picture of a long and loving relationship. You must have many cherished childhood memories in the home you now wish to sell." "Of course," William said, puffing out his chest slightly. "The best." Wonderful, Vincent said. Then you can surely help the court with the simple matter of fact. A fond memory, I'm sure. He paused, his eyes locking with William's. Mr. Sinclair, for the court, could you please tell us the name of the dog you had from the age of 5 until you left for college? The golden retriever mix that appears in nearly every family photograph of your childhood. The entire courtroom went still. William's confident smirk vanished. A flicker of panic crossed his face. His eyes darted from Vincent to his lawyer, then to me. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. It's a simple question, Mr. Sinclair, Vincent prodded, his voice still soft. The name of your beloved childhood pet. It was a long time ago, William stammered, a flush creeping up his neck. We had a few dogs. I don't recall. Sparky? Max? He was guessing, his voice rising in pitch. The names were wrong, so laughably, obviously wrong. You don't recall? Vincent's voice was now laced with ice. You've testified under oath about your mother's failing memory, yet you cannot recall the name of the animal you supposedly cherished for 15 years, the dog you cried over for a week when he passed away. William's facade crumbled completely. This is irrelevant. It's a trick question, he blurted out, his voice shrill with desperation. The judge, who had been watching this exchange with a frown, now leaned forward, his interest piqued. Answer the question, Mr. Sinclair. William could only shake his head, speechless and humiliated. The fortress of lies had been breached. Vincent turned slowly to face the judge, and then he adjusted his tie. It was the signal. The judge looked from the floundering son on the stand to the silent mother at the table. Mrs. Sinclair, the judge said, his voice now gentle and curious. Perhaps you can enlighten the court. I lifted my head, my back straight, my eyes clear. I looked directly at my son, at the pathetic, greedy stranger he had become. In a voice that was not frail or confused, but steady and resonant in the silent room, I said, his name was Jake. I didn't stop there. The memories, so pure and true, flowed out of me. He had a small scar above his left eye from a fight with the neighbor's cat. His favorite toy was a squeaky blue ball that he would hide under the hydrangeas. He loved chasing squirrels, but he never once caught one. And every single night, for 15 years, he slept on the rag rug at the foot of my son's bed. A collective gasp went through the courtroom. The truth, in its simple, detailed elegance, was undeniable. It was more powerful than all the fabricated stories of salt cakes and forgotten bills. It was the sound of their entire case, their entire cruel deception, shattering into a million pieces. The silence that followed my words was absolute. It was a heavy, weighted silence, filled with the stark reality of what had just been exposed. William sat frozen on the witness stand, his face a ghastly shade of pale. The carefully constructed image of the dutiful son had been stripped away, revealing the hollow, grasping man beneath. Cheryl, in her seat behind him, looked as if she had been slapped. The judge stared at me for a long moment, his expression shifting from pity to respect, and then to a cold, simmering anger directed at my son. He slammed his gavel down, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the still room. Petition for conservatorship is denied, with prejudice, he announced, his voice booming with authority. This meant William could never file such a petition again, with authority. He wasn't finished. He fixed William with a glacial stare. Mr. Sinclair, what you have attempted to do here today is not just legally baseless. It is morally reprehensible. You have weaponized your mother's age against her and perjured yourself in a court of law in a contemptible attempt to seize her assets. This court finds your conduct to be an abhorrent abuse of the legal system and a disgusting betrayal of familial trust. You are dismissed. William stumbled from the witness stand, refusing to meet my eyes. He and Cheryl scurried out of the courtroom like vermin exposed to the light, their humiliation a palpable cloud around them. They didn't look back. Vincent gently patted my hand. "You were magnificent, Marion," he whispered. A profound wave of relief washed over me, so potent it left me weak. It wasn't a feeling of triumph or glee, but of a deep, sorrowful vindication. I had won, but what had I truly lost? The son I had raised was gone, vanished long before this day, replaced by a stranger I no longer knew or wished to. Back home, the house felt different. It was no longer a besieged fortress, but a sanctuary once more. The afternoon sun streamed through the clean kitchen windows, and the grandfather clock chimed its steady, comforting rhythm. I walked out into my garden, the crisp autumn air filling my lungs. I looked at the sturdy oak tree, its leaves turning to gold and crimson, ready to let go for the winter, confident in the promise of spring. I had my home. I had my mind. I had my dignity. The legal battle was over, but the emotional wounds would take longer to heal. I mourned the son I remembered from faded photographs, the boy who had loved a dog named Jake. But as I stood there, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face, I knew I was strong enough to weather this storm, just like the old oak. I had faced the ultimate betrayal and had not been broken. I was still Marion Sinclair, mistress of my own home, guardian of my own life, and that was a victory worth more than any inheritance.